Welcome to SolarWinds Lab. My name is Kevin Sparenberg, and I will be your host for today. As you can see, the studio has had a slight little facelift. Myself, like many of you, have been asked to work from home to kind of just deal with these trying times, but we're still going to provide you the content that helps you deal with these problems because, let's face it, life doesn't stop just because we're asked to work from home. So what's this lab about today? The lab really is about PowerShell and how that works with the Orion SDK and the Orion API. Now, the important part about this is I'm making a couple assumptions here that you know nothing about PowerShell at all. I'm kind of a fan, more of a fanatic of it, but we're going to really start from the basics. So let's go ahead and just cover some details to begin with. So today's demo system is going to be Windows Server 2019. That's with a GUI. It is running .NET Framework 4.8. I have the Chromium Microsoft Edge installed. That's just for downloading bits. You can use whatever you like. And I'm actually using Visual Studio Code from Microsoft as well, plus the PowerShell extension. And I'll go more into kind of what that looks like in a minute. But let's talk about some basics with PowerShell. One of the things you should understand about PowerShell, it is an object-oriented scripting language, and it's built a lot on the .NET framework. So what that really means is that every variable, anything you work with, has both properties and methods. The good part about that is properties are a way to access details about that particular variable without doing extra work, and methods are a way to act upon that variable without doing extra work. The example I talk about is that we take a string and we can get the length of that string using a property, and then we can split that string on something else using a method. Why is this important? Because you don't have to actually build all these things. You don't have to have a string and then write a function to go and figure out the length of that string. You don't have to have a string and write a function to go and split that out among a specific character. It's just something that's done. It's in there, it's part of the system itself. So the other big part of PowerShell is something we call commandlets. Now what a commandlet is it's basically a function. Microsoft defines this, and I'll read it direct. A commandlet is a lightweight command that is used in Windows PowerShell environment. Okay, so what's that really mean? Think about it like a function. It is something that you take one bit of data and you turn it into something else. So in examples that I like to give is get child item. This is equivalent in the Windows world of doing a dir. So get me the children in this particular location. Or also like in Linux, the ls, list out the elements in this location. Almost all commandlets take the form of verb-noun. And that's just a way you can kind of keep an understanding. So get child item, get help, install member, get aliases, format list, whatever they happen to be. They're all built that way. And because these are functions, a lot of these functions take parameters. And those parameters can come in a number of different ways. There's two main ways they come in. The first one is through what's called a named parameter. That named parameter basically has a name and then you follow it up with the parameter. So in this case, we have get child item, path, environment, profile. Perfect. There's also the option to pass parameters positionally, meaning I know this is going to be the first parameter. I know this is going to be the second parameter. So in this case, we're just doing get child item, profile. Now what that means is we can go ahead and do the shorthand. And we can also use aliases, which we will not be covering, but a lot of them are pre-built in. For clarity, for all the examples I'm going to be working with, I'm going to be using named parameters so you actually understand what I'm talking about. The way to get information from one place or one commandlet into another commandlet or from a variable through a process and then into another variable is the vertical pipe. So that is the vertical pipe is shift / like that. And that's basically how you move from one thing to another. This was really the reason I started working a lot with PowerShell, because I could move data without storing it somewhere, basically move it while it's in memory from one place to another, do a transform, do another transform, do another transform, do another transform, and ultimately end up with what I wanted. You can also access the methods and properties by using the dot notation. So like you saw in the earlier example where you just have string, you can do string.length, and that's how you get it, or string.split, or string.insert, or any number of things. The other thing I want to mention is tab completion is built into PowerShell pretty significantly. So if you actually type get-c and start tabbing through, it'll actually list out all of the possible commandlets that match. The last thing I want to cover today about kind of foundations of PowerShell are modules. So what a module is it's actually well, it's a bunch of commandlets, sometimes commandlets and variables and other kind of system state information, but it's essentially a bundle of all of these built for a specific feature or function. There are certain ones for managing VMware. There are specific modules for working with Hyper-V. There's ones for working with DHCP or DNS. You don't need to know a lot of information about these because if you're on a modern version of PowerShell, they kind of just already get imported. But if you have to build one from scratch or you have to import one, which we will be doing in our example, then you need to go through and say, oh, hey, I need to find this and then install it. And I'll show you how to do that. The one we'll be using today is called Swiss PowerShell. Last but not least, if you get confused or any part of this, obviously ask us questions, but there's some internal resources actually really, really good for learning PowerShell on your own. Get member, get help, format list, outgrid you, get alias. I'll show you examples of a couple of these. These are the ones that basically saved me and actually let me self-learn as much as possible on PowerShell. The get member one is great, especially if you're working with a new variable type you haven't worked with before. You take the variable, you pipe that to get member, and it lists out all the methods and all the properties that apply to that. So you know how to interact with that. Get help does exactly what you think it does. If you don't know what get member does, you can get help for get member, and you'll get a list of how to work with it, including parameters. Format list is a nice way to output information on your screen so you can see it while you're working with variables in flight. Out grid view is kind of a cheater thing, but if you actually take a data set and out grid view it, actually puts it into a chart in a different UI so you can actually see what you're working with. That's really, really good for insanely large data sets. I like using it when I'm trying to determine if I need to use filters. The last one for me is get alias. I mentioned earlier that dir and ls are basically the show me the contents of a directory versions, and the PowerShell version of that is get child item. If you were to do get alias on your system, you would probably see both dir and ls listed there because they're known common commands. So if you actually use that in most of your systems, if you're running PowerShell, you will actually see it do the same type of function. So let's start with the basics. Where do you actually get the stuff you need to actually follow along with today's lab? And that is the Orion SDK on GitHub. You can either go to GitHub and just search for Orion SDK or use this link. If you need help after you've already started working with it, there's a Q&A section on Thwack at thwack.com/Orion SDK. And you can also download the SWCL Studio from the releases folder in the GitHub. And that's actually where we're going to start. Okay, so let's go ahead and collect the bits. So I'm going to go onto my machine and I'm going to download the Orion SDK. So I'm going to open my browser. The choice is yours, of course. I'm going to go to that releases link. So it's GitHub, SolarWinds, Orion SDK releases. So I'm going to go ahead and pull down a copy. I can pull down beta releases if I like, but I'm going to go ahead and just pull down the latest release and then download it. This is downloaded in a couple of seconds. It's not very large. And now it's ready for install. So let's go ahead and find that. Go to our downloads folder. There it is, the SDK. I'm going to go ahead and unblock it because it was downloaded from the internet. And I'm going to go ahead and install it. That's it. It's done. A couple clicks. 45 seconds, a minute, minute and a half at most, and you're ready to go. So what did that actually give us? So go ahead and open your start menu and look for SWQL, and that is your SWCL Studio. Okay, now before I actually log into the SWCL Studio, I want to explain why we're bothering to do this. And for that, I need to kind of take a small step back. So let me talk to you a quick second about the SolarWinds Information Service. So the SolarWinds Information Service is basically, it's an abstract layer. It exists between the web interfaces and exists between the end users and the backend database. We have a full definition available on the GitHub if you want it. Basically, it's just this layer that, so you don't have to know all the database calls. If you understand how Orion is built, you'll be fine. And people say, well, Kevin, I can go ahead and I can find this information in SQL and I know where it is in the database, so why don't I just update it there? I was like, well, there's good and bads for that. There's a couple of reasons you want to use Swiss. For me, the real reason you want to use Swiss is that it's centralized credential management. So if you've taken the time to build credentials actually in your environment already, then we inherit those. You log in with admin, or if you use AD credentials, you log in with your AD credentials, and that's how you get access. And we honor the limitation that are already in there on the accounts. So if you have an account that says, oh, you can't see any NCM data, Guess what? If you're actually working through Swiss, that account can't see NCM data. It's insulated against database changes. So if you've been with SolarWinds for a while, using the Orion platform for a while, you know that we frequently update the database because we need to make changes. We need to extend the products. We need to make sure there's more information available. We need to store things in different ways. And if you're using a traditional SQL call, something directly in the Microsoft database, you're going to run into problems because we're going to change something behind the scenes. And the last thing is it kind of allows for this higher level operation. So if you were to do something like, I don't know, let's say, and I'm not telling you to do this, let's say you go into the nodes table or the nodes view in Orion, in the Orion database, and you delete a row. Okay, great. That's no longer going to show up on your nodes list. But what you haven't done is you haven't gone on the backside and deleted all the interfaces. You haven't gone and deleted all the volumes, all of the applications that are assigned to that. All that stuff is now orphaned in the database. If you do this through the SolarWinds information service, we honor that. We know those links. If you delete a node from Orion, we know to follow those steps and delete those things out so you don't have these orphaned entries. So let's go ahead and dig right into the SWCL Studio. So here we go. I'm going to put in the server, name or IP. I'm going to put in my username and my password. There we go, logged in. You can see this connected here on 10.196.3.11. That's my instance in my lab. And we have an empty query window, and otherwise this looks pretty plain, right? Yeah, I expected you to feel that way. But let me dig in a little bit. So I'm going to expand this out because we're going to need the space, really. So this is our Orion server at the database level. And then if we expand this out, we have all of these objects. What we have here is the namespace that we're dealing with. So in this case, we have Cirrus, but I'll go down to one that most people are probably familiar with. So we'll just go down and we'll dig into Orion. So here we have Orion. Underneath this namespace, we have tables. So Orion Actions. Let's see. We'll go with one everyone should know. We have Orion Nodes. Cool. So we have Orion Nodes. And underneath of that, we have the node ID, which most people know is the primary key. It's the thing that actually kind of identifies it within the system. Then we have all of the various properties. Again, you're going to hear the word properties, methods, verbs, these things over and over again when you work with APIs. So we have all of the properties, how many CPUs are in something, what the engine ID is assigned to it. Then we have some more stuff. So here you can see these in green. These are inherited properties. So what these are is they are properties of one node that relate to another one. So for example, let's see, ancestor display name. So this is, if I have a node and happens to be a VM that's running on a host, then that host is an ancestor. So I can actually just ask the SDK and Swiss what that connection is, and it'll just bring that information out. Then if I continue even further down, we have a bunch of these links. Now you see these links, these are actually, we call these navigation properties. And what this is if you're familiar with SQL, you know how you can do joins and inner joins and left outers and right outers and all these kinds of joins. You don't have to do that here. So if you wanted, I don't know, the containers or the custom properties for a node, we'll actually automatically bring that in just through a different way to dot notate it. And we won't cover that specifically today, but we can show you how to do that later on. And then last but certainly not least, down all the way at the bottom, we have these in the pink. And these are your verbs. So there are probably some things you're familiar with. So unmanage, remanage, poll now. These are things that you can do. These are basically actions you can take on elements that are part of this particular namespace, in other words, Orion nodes. So if I have an Orion node, I can actually pull it now, or I can unmanage it, or I can remanage it. Okay, so that's all well and good, but what do you really need to know about this? So SWCL Studio, you can see here it's a query, and if I want to just get everything from nodes, and let's do that together. So if I go up here to nodes, I can actually right-click on nodes and generate select statement. And they're going to select top 1,000 nodes, and here's all of the details from Orion.nodes. And I can hit play or hit F5. You'll see me using F5 a lot. This will run this query against the Orion database. And there we go, returned in a couple of seconds, all the records. Now, I know you're going to look at this and you're going to say, you know what, this looks amazingly like SQL. And it does. It was built with that in mind. It looks and behaves very much like SQL because you are querying stuff. However, it's a little different. So let me show you where the SolarWinds query language, or SWCL, is different than SQL. Okay, so let's start with a simple kind of just ground rules here. Like I said, SWCL is very much like SQL, but it is not the same. So the good part is most of the stuff you already know you can just continue to use, like the SQL wildcards, the percent and the underscore are not the file wildcards. So if you're familiar with SQL, you're already there. Select statements are the only ones supported. You cannot do updates, you cannot do merges, you cannot do deletes. It is really only for querying data from the SolarWinds information service. Single quotes denote strings, so pretty simple. Don't use double quotes. And then comments always start with a double dash, just like SQL. It's completely supported. So in a lot of ways, SWCL is very much like SQL. I will tell you one thing I don't have on this sheet is that asterisks do not work. You cannot do select star. You have to know the names of the fields, which is why it's great to have something like SWCL Studio to help you out. Okay, so this is all well and good, but let's go ahead and set ourselves a task. Let's go ahead and get a list of all nodes that are running Windows, currently up, return only the caption, IP address, uptime, CPU count, and then sort that two different ways. We'll sort it descending by CPU count and then ascending by uptime. So not impossible, but not something you can easily get out of the report writer, and something that might not be easy to get out of SQL directly. So let's show you how to do that in SWCL Studio. So let's go ahead and select the caption, IP address, uptime, and CPU count from nodes. Well, we already did all nodes, so let's go ahead and just kind of limit that list. And here we are, select caption, IP address, system uptime, CPU count from nodes. And then go ahead and run that. There you go. 130 rows in less than 1 second. Cool, I'll take it. So what else do we need to do? Oh, we need to have where it was Windows machines only. So in that case, this is where vendor equal Windows, like I said, single quotes for strings. Let's rerun that. All right, we're down to 94 rows. All right, so we've got obviously got our Windows filter on. And we need up. So anyone who's working with us for a while knows that status of 1 is up. So here we have where it is Windows and it's up. Run that. 45 rows. Oh, got a lot of systems that are down. That's probably not good. Whoops. And then we need to order by. And we'll order this by CPU count. Okay, there we go. CPU count 1, 2, 3, 4, 32. Okay, so it's obviously going correctly now. And then, oh, but we didn't want CPU count ascending, we wanted it descending. So DESC for descending. Rerun that. There we go. 32, 32, 16, 8, 4, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. All right, good. And then lastly, we wanted it sorted ascending by system uptime. Okay, so anything that actually had the same numbers sorts first by CPU and then sorts by the uptime. And there you go. Okay, so I know what you're saying. Kevin, you've taken the time to tell me why PowerShell is important and you haven't used a single thing in PowerShell yet. And yes, I got it. The reason I'm showing you SWCL Studio first is because when you're beginning these queries, it's a lot easier to build it in here and then put it into some type of PowerShell function, or if you want to write your own commandlets or work with the ones we provide. It's a whole lot easier to do it there, validate that it's returning the information you want, and then put it into your script somewhere. So let me tell you what we're going to do in PowerShell. First and foremost, we've got to download the module if it's not already pre-installed. I'll show you how to find that and how to install it. And then we will build a connection to Swiss, and then we will execute this query that we just built. So let's go ahead and go back to the machine. And here we go. I'm just going to keep this window open, but I'm going to move it off to the side. And then I'm going to go ahead and open Visual Studio Code. Now, it's entirely up to you whether you want to use Visual Studio Code or PowerShell regular vanilla, or if you want to go ahead and use PowerShell ISE, the integrated scripting environment. And all of them are good. I'm trying to get in a better habit of using code because Microsoft is not releasing updates for the ISE. I really like the ISE. It's where I started. It's what I worked with. I'm working in code so I can get better with it. You'll notice here that when we want to comment stuff out in PowerShell scripts, we use the #, the hashtag, the octothorpe, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing. If you start with a single line for that, this is a comment. It's not run. If you need a multi-line one, this is a bigger comment. It just works. So I'll go ahead and strike those out. We don't need those for our example. So I also want to go and talk about some other kind of quick information I get. So this is the string example I dealt with. So I'm actually going to go ahead and run this. So just like before, you can highlight it. And here we have F8 to run the selection. I'm going to be using the command on my keyboard because it's faster from this point on. So I will store that string. You'll see it runs down here in the terminal. Then I will get the length of that string, F8. And then I will split that. There we go. And there's your array. All right, cool. So this is the basics. So this is a known working good PowerShell environment. The reason I have this stuff up here is it's important to know which PowerShell version you're working with. And the best way to get that is PS version table. You can just do $PS version table and then execute that. And this PS version we're running is 5.1. Anything I'm teaching you will work in pretty much anything PowerShell 3 or later. I prefer 5.1. It's kind of the default standard right now for fully integrated with the support of the entire .NET framework, which a lot of the stuff we need for the SolarWinds information service comes from the .NET framework. So I'm happier sticking with this. The other thing I got here is select sim instance, class name, win32 underscore operating system, and pipe that information, select an object from it, expand the property called caption. This is a really glorified way of getting your version of Windows. And get sim instance with the class name, select object, expand is a really long form way of getting your version of Windows. Like I said, this is Server 2019 Standard Edition. So we don't need any of that, so we'll just strike it out. And let's go ahead and put our query in here. So I like to store it as Swickle query. And then I'm putting it all in double quotes since there actually is a single quote in here. And I want to maintain the difference. So I'm going to copy from here to here. There we go. Now if I run this, so query, you see it's all down here, no error messages. And now if I just clear the screen and then say gimme Swickle query, and I just hit tab to complete Swickle query, there's my query. So quick and easy. All right, let's talk about what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to build a credential set to use and to send to SolarWinds information service. Number two, I'm actually going to build that connection and store that in a variable so I can use it repeatedly later down the road. And then I'm going to run a query using that connection. So first things first, we're going to get the credentials. So get credential. This is a native PowerShell message. I like putting this in. It is not required. Enter your Orion creds. And that'll just basically grab the credentials, but it won't store them anywhere. So I'm going to have to store them in Swiss creds. Okay. So let's go ahead and just run that. So here it is asking for the user. And my user is admin. And my password is I'm not telling you. There we go. So now that's stored as Swiss creds. Let's double check. Swiss creds. Yep, we have the admin as the username and a secure string as the password. Okay, cool. That's what we needed. So let's go ahead and build the connection. So to connect to Swiss, you use the commandlet connect Swiss. So connect Swiss on the host name, and this is going to be DNS or IP, and then the credential set we're sending to it is Swiss creds. Again, we need to store this so we can use it later. I'm going to call it Swiss connection, and then we'll run that line, and then we will look at that variable. Okay, good. It actually returned something. Otherwise, it would return a blank. So we've got our connection. So now we need to make the query. So to actually execute this query, we do get Swiss data, Swiss connection. What do you know? I named it the same thing. Big shock there. Query. And then we can use our query. And we can run that. can run all of these. Great. And there's our results. We have our caption, IP address, system uptime, and CPU count, just like we had from here. In fact, it should match pretty close, except for system uptime, because it's been a little bit of time. So this is good. We know this works. We're able to get the same data out from either location. We could have also built a custom report to pull this information out and sort it that way. But the reason you want to do this with PowerShell, or really any other scripting language, but I prefer PowerShell, is because you'll be able to iterate over this or work with this stuff for a number of reasons. But I need to call out a couple of things we want to add here. So if I go back to the query, there's two parameters I want to add to the select. So I actually want to add details, URL, and URI. Now, you're going to ask me why I'm doing this, and there is a specific reason for it. But for the time being, let's go ahead and just take this information, and we'll go ahead and store this as nodes. So I will just highlight all of this again, hit F8 to rerun it. Boom. It's going to ask me for my credentials again. And now if I actually look at nodes, there. You can see caption, IP address, system uptime, CPU count, details, URL, and URI. So why did I add these two in here? Because I don't really have a need for them. The reason is this is actually the way you interact with a lot of things within the Orion system. So it's better to have this habit of trying to see if these particular fields are available in any table so you can use them later on. URI is especially useful because URI is how you definitively contact a specific element, for lack of a better term. It's the way you actually target any one thing in the Orion platform. Whether you're talking about a node, it has a specific URI. Whether you're talking about a custom property, it has a certain URI. Whether you're talking about a volume or interface or an application or a component or a template, all of those things have specific URIs. That's how you interact with them. And technically, it's how we interact with them from the front side when we're doing web calls. We'll also call through Swiss using this kind of URI nomenclature so we can get back and work with the infrastructure that way. Right about now is when I get the question, why bother with doing any of this? And the reason is, if you're like me, you've probably spent a lot of time managing your Orion infrastructure. You've put nodes in, you've pulled nodes out, you've done very basic things in there. You've added interfaces, you've deleted these things, you've put in custom property, whatever it happens to be. But the problem is there's generally a lot of clicking involved. You go through, you say, yes, next, next, finish. Yes, next, next, finish. Yes, next, next, finish. And that's fine if you've got a dozen, 2 dozen, maybe even 50 or 100 elements you need to do that for. If you got to do this for a large environment like 1,000, that's going to take you forever. And you can probably farm that work off to somebody else, but to really do it right and really do it the same way every time, you really should consider scripting it. Now, this is a very simplified example that we're not going to go into, but let me go ahead and show you a way you could use this to help kind of maybe automate some of your work. So let me kind of give you a scenario. You are responsible for making sure all your systems are patched on a reasonable amount of time, and the reason that a lot of patches don't occur is because systems have been up for too long. They've been up longer than 90 days, so therefore they're not getting new patches or what have you. And your task as the IT admin is to go in, find all the machines in your infrastructure that have been up for over 90 days, and then reboot them during your change window, of course. This is not a simple ask. There is a number of ways to get this information. The most common is from the command line using the uptime Unix tool, or for any number of ways. But let's say we were working with this list here where we just had these Windows servers. So if I wanted to do that, I would have to do it one at a time, unless you script it out. So what a script like that would look like is, we kind of sketches out in our heads, is we have this nodes list that we just stored. I want to cycle through each and every one of those. I want to find them when the uptime is over 90 days, and if the uptime is over 90 days, then I want to take that and send a reboot command to that device. So let's go ahead and write that real fast. So We're going to get into some loops. We're going to talk about how you iterate across loops and how you work with elements. And if there are any questions, please do not be afraid to reach out. Everyone had to start somewhere. This is not the simplest thing I ever wrote, but it's a really good way to kind of get started. Like I said, this is going to be very much a primer. So if I go simplified, if I go for each node in nodes, and what this is saying is take a list of nodes, and for each one of those, basically each row, do something to the node, that single row. So let's calculate the number of days up. So days up would be the node, its system uptime. There we go. Whoops. And since we know that's in seconds, we divide that by 60 seconds, or by 60 to get minutes, 60 to get hours, and 24 to get days. That's it. It just handles it that way. All right. So now we have to think about this. All right. So if days up is greater than 90, then what do I want to do? I want to reboot this machine. So you'll also notice here that I've actually used this -GT instead of greater than. PowerShell actually uses these for comparison operators. It uses ones for equal is -EQ. And the reason they do this is because there's been a lot of confusion about in scripting languages, not just PowerShell, but in all scripting languages, whether stuff like the equal sign or the greater than sign or the less than sign or the exclamation point or any number of these things mean different things and different ways they're being used. Microsoft decided for PowerShell early on to try to eliminate that as much as possible. So equals is only ever used for assignment of variable values, and comparison uses -EQ, and I will link to the PowerShell cheat sheet in the notes for the lab, so you can have that if you need it. But just look out for these. There's greater than, there's greater than or equal to, there's equal to, all the comparison operators you're used to. So let's go back to our example. If it's over 90 days, what do I want to do? Well, for me, because I do this a lot with scripts, is I actually want to write out a message. Okay, so let's reboot the computer with name node.caption. Okay. And then let's go ahead and actually do that. If it's a Windows machine and it's on the same domain and you have sufficient rights, you can actually just send restart computer, computer name, and then the IP address of the node. So node.ip address, or DNS name if you actually captured that. I don't actually want to do this, so a great little function or parameter that they've added into PowerShell is something called what if, which basically says, if I were to do this, what would my result be? But don't actually do it. It's actually one of my favorite things to put in most of my scripts. So let's go ahead and leave that in there. So that is our if. And to really close this out, let's do an else. So we don't actually have to do anything if it's under 90 days, but let's write a note anyway. Write host. This computer is cool. And then we'll put the name in here as well. No caption. And because I'm feeling a little goofy, let's go ahead and add the foreground color green. All right, so if we look at this real fast, we're going to cycle through everything in that list. We're going to calculate the number of days currently up. If that happens to be over 90 days, we're going to go ahead and write a message. Now we're going to issue a reboot command, except we're not actually issuing a reboot command. Then if it's not the case, then we'll say this computer is cool. And I have a typo, I got a capital H in there. We're just going to run with it. So I can just highlight this section, since we actually haven't changed anything, and run this selection. Woo, that went by fast, right? So let's go ahead and look at this. So we actually have a lot of machines that need to be rebooted. So let's see. So this each hypervisor is cool. This computer is cool. This computer is cool. It's really easy when you color code it to see what's cool. And then there you go. We're going to go ahead and try to restart this machine, our machine with this IP. So let's reboot the computer with East Hyper V01, and this is the IP for that. That's West, that's the IP. So you can see here it's actually able to cycle through all this stuff. Now, like I said, this is a very simple scenario, but let's say you have something like a frequent change window, like every Thursday night from 11 p.m. until 4 a.m. on Friday. All of your computers can, in theory, be down because it's, you know, your maintenance window. But maybe it's only your maintenance window for one data center, and another data center has it at a different time. There's a number of ways you can do this. I've written something like that will actually go in and go through each of those data centers and find all the machines in those data centers, and then like once a week go through and flip them to suppress the alerts or to unmanage the elements in there. So during that change cycle, you don't actually get an alert blast when something goes down. Okay, so like I said, that's a really simple scenario, and it's probably something you're not actually going to run into, but something you may run into is maybe you want to turn off alerts for a specific device depending on where they are in your environment at a certain time each week, or maybe you want to automate importing or removing devices. Or maybe you want to do something even simpler. Maybe you just want to change the caption names on things or something like that. There's a lot of things you can actually do, and anything you need to do more than like twice, you should consider trying to think about a script. And that's why I really like having the forum available on Thwack, because people will put in questions there and say, hey, how do I do this or how do I do that? So go ahead and search if you got a question. We've probably got an answer there. There's one more thing I need to cover, because on that machine I went and I installed the Orion SDK, which is great. But the problem with installing that is that it adds another program, and some people are very specific and you can't always run those. So on that server, I went and I actually installed the SDK full on there. You don't have to do that. If you basically just need another place where you can interact with it and you can't run the SDK, you can actually just run the Swiss PowerShell module. So I need to actually revert this machine, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so let's say you have this scenario where you can't install something like that MSI on a machine. But you can't extend it with PowerShell modules. So one of the things I like about the SDK is it automatically installs that PowerShell module we talked about earlier, Swiss PowerShell. But you don't need the SDK to do that. If you really need the lightest touch possible, you can just install the module. So here I am in a PowerShell command window. I have reverted this machine so it doesn't have anything installed, and we can check that by trying to get one of the commands from SolarWinds. So let's go ahead and try to get command for connect Swiss is not recognized. Okay, so we can see that the module is not installed. So what I can do is I can do find module, again, tab completion works, give it a name, and what you're not seeing here is it's actually going on the internet and it's connecting and it's checking some of the major repositories for PowerShell scripts and modules on the web. So this one requires the NuGet provider that's just used to actually slipstream the stuff in. So I'm going to say, yeah, you can go ahead and install NuGet. And then let's see if it actually finds Swiss PowerShell. And there it is, version 250.214 of Swiss PowerShell is in the PS Gallery repository. This is actually one of the ones Microsoft uses to host a lot of their stuff, so we just kind of piggybacked on that, so we use the same repo. So let's say I want to install it. Well, if we're doing this kind of verb-noun thing, what do you think? Maybe install module. Name Swiss PowerShell. Uh-oh, I need admin rights for that. Easily fixed. Just right-click on PowerShell, run it as an admin. Install module, name Swiss PowerShell. Would you like to add PS Gallery? Yes, I believe that is trusted. And we're pulling down Swiss PowerShell. Perfect. So now if I restart my sessions in PowerShell, and then get that first command, get command connect Swiss, there it is. That's all it takes to install the module. You don't need Swickle Studio. I like it because it always installs it, but it's really just as easy. Now, I know we've gone a lot about the API and what you can do. One of my favorite examples was written by a community member. It's using the API to actually pull things out of monitoring after their 60 days no contact. We'll include the link down below in the description. But let me show you kind of some of the best ways to get more information about PowerShell and just to get used to it. I mentioned them earlier in the video, but let's go ahead and get alias. Well, that's a really big list. So yeah, so maybe we'll just try a couple. Let's see. CD to the parent directory. Okay, so I can change directory. So how about list, not a native Windows function? I can list. All right, so let's go back into Orion. Let's go ahead and make dir folder. Well, what do you know? Made a folder. And then we can go into that folder. Yeah, okay. What I'm showing you here is most of the commands you already know, whether they be from the Windows command prompt or a lot of the Linux commands, they're just built in here. And they're built in such a way that you can kind of get into PowerShell as quickly as possible with the lightest amount of lift. One of the things I like is it actually has self-documenting help. So let's say we have that nodes list from before. And in fact, we'll go ahead and just paste our code right in here. So I'll get my credentials, stored my credentials. I will build my connection. I will store my query. And then I will execute my query. And everything's stored in nodes. And what's nice about this is, here's some of the things that I've used to get better at this. So we have the variable nodes. What can I do with the variable nodes? Well, that's when I go ahead and send that over to getMember. And getMember tells me this is a dynamic type that has CPU count, caption, toString, get type, system uptime. So here are the properties, and then we can convert to strings, we can get types. So information is basically being given back to us. But because we also know it's an array, supports count because it's a traditional array. But maybe I need to see what's actually in there. So I can look at the nodes list, and maybe I just need to see the first one. So use hard bracket and then a 0. 0 indicates the first. This is a 0-based array system. So 0 shows you the first, 1 shows you the second, so on and so forth. -1 shows you the last, -2 shows you the second from the last. You get the idea. But maybe seeing these one at a time is not helpful. Maybe I need to see all of them at once. And that's when you can say format, take that information, format it as a list. There we go, we got our whole list, but that's not really helpful. So you know what? Let's put it out in something that's a little easier to work with. Out, grid view. And there we go. So here we have the caption, IP address, same order we've been dealing with before. And we can just close that out. So these are just a couple ways that I've learned to work with. These are the simple things that I started with. Whenever I needed to learn something new with a new commandlet, I would always do something like, I don't know, get Swiss data, but I would do get help first. And then it tells me here's the current syntax, if there's any aliases and any remarks, or maybe it's a function in Windows that I don't know how to do. Like we used restart computer, so let me get help for restart computer. Okay, cool. So here's restart computer. This is the syntax, everything it takes. Maybe I need to see more, and I'm just not really digging this. You can actually do press up to get that back, and then say online. And it'll actually launch your default browser, whatever it happens to be, and take you how it works, including, well, here's some examples. Restart computer with computer name 123. So it actually is self-documenting. It's actually self-healing. So there's lots of places to find information on PowerShell, whether that happens to be something on Microsoft's online documentation or something you read on Thwack, or a script example you work with and kind of play with, or a deep dive, or a book. I've got shelves and shelves of book on PowerShell as I started to learn it years ago. But it doesn't matter. Whatever way you work best with it is the way that the information can be made. And in that light, We want to know what you want to see. What do you need to see next? This really was the very bare minimum primer, just how to get started with PowerShell, just how to get started with the SolarWinds information service. What do you need to know next? Do you need to know about verbs? Do you need to know about querying across data points? Do you need to understand how to change information? What do you need? What's your next steps? Let us know, and we'll see you next time on SolarWinds Lab.